The Last of Us Part 2's Platinum and 100% is a roller coaster of emotion. A game that came out in 2020 for the PS4 came with a lot of controversy. Whether it was the story choices that they made or the characters that we get to play as, this game definitely made you feel some type of way. Today, we're going to be playing the 2024 remastered version of The Last of Us Part 2 for the PS5. We'll also be getting the Platinum and the 100% for it. For the Platinum Trophy, PSN Profiles has it rated at a 3 out of 10 difficulty, requiring 2 playthroughs and roughly 35 hours to complete. And if you want to do the DLC Permadeath and Grounded trophies, that's a 4 out of 10 difficulty with an additional playthrough taking 10 more hours. But we're going to be doing things a little bit differently and trying to get this done in 2 playthroughs. Now all that leaves is the final DLC for No Return. And with a 5 out of 10 difficulty and roughly 10 hours to complete, I think this is a good place to start. To begin, we'll be starting by picking our difficulty, and since there's no trophies related to difficulty aside from doing the daily run, we'll be doing all our runs on very light, just to speed things up. After completing our first encounter, we get our first trophy for True Strength for getting an S rank. Next, we get a trophy Mixed Bags for getting 5 kills with different weapons in an assault encounter. Shortly after, we get a trophy Become the Hunter for killing 12 enemies in a hunted encounter. After playing for a couple hours, we get our next trophy, Burglar, for opening the safe and capture without killing any enemies. The next trophy I get is for defeating all bosses in No Return. There are 6 total bosses, with the Rat King being the last boss to defeat, and after we defeat it, we get the trophy Good Riddance. The next trophy is Got Your Back for winning a round of Holdout without your ally falling below 70% health. For the next trophy, we'll need to complete 5 gambits in 1 run, which are just mini challenges that appear in the top left, and once we do, we get the trophy Risk Taker. Our next trophy is for completing encounters with mods activated. There are a total of 26 mods in No Return, and once we complete encounters with at least one of each of those 26 mods, we'll get the trophy Modded. To close out some of the easier trophies in No Return, we'll get the trophy Roll Call for winning a run with every character. Now there are only 4 trophies left to get, and 2 of them are associated with the Ellie faction and the Abby faction. And in order to complete them, we need to complete special challenges for each character that sometimes requires multiple runs. For the Team Abby challenge, in order to actually complete it, we'll need to play as Ellie, since one of the characters in Team Abby requires us to heal a certain amount, which can only be done after upgrading one of Ellie's skill trees. And once we do that, we get the trophy for Team Abby. And finally, we get the trophy Team Ellie for completing all of Ellie's faction challenges. Now for our last 2 trophies in the daily run, and it looks like we're going to have to do it with Mel. Looking at our board, it does look like we got a lot of Hunted, which is great because we can go into our settings and change our combat accessibility so that when we're laying prone, we're actually invisible to enemies. And we'll also change slow-mo while aiming in case we get into trouble and we do have to shoot our way out. I highly recommend turning these 2s on because they don't actually disable the trophies and it makes this much, much easier. And since I can only attempt this once a day, I definitely thought it was worth it. We begin with our first Hunted, and this one's easy. We just stay prone and we wait for the timer to run out and we complete the encounter. The next is Assault. Not as easy as Hunted, but since we have invisible while prone, we're able to just crawl up behind enemies and take them out. And even though it takes a little longer, we do finish. Now for the last 2 before the boss, we have 2 Hunteds, and we just stick to our old reliable strategy of invisible while prone, and we get through them both fairly easily. Now all that's left is to defeat the boss of the run, and we happen to get the Rat King. Now with the Rat King, invisible while prone won't be helping us because it can see us no matter what. But slow down while ADSing will help, just in case we get into trouble while we're shooting him. So luckily, since we haven't been getting into a lot of fights in our previous encounters, we are stocked up with a lot of ammo, and just going slow and steady, we're able to secure the win against the Rat King and the infected that splits off from him. And with that, we end up getting the 2 trophies associated to the daily run: May your survival be long, and May your death be swift. While editing this video, a trophy pack was added to the game, which brought 2 new characters to the no return mode in Marlene and Bill, which we'll now have to play as to get 3 more trophies. First trophy we can get from the new DLC pack is for Queen Firefly for killing 15 enemies with Marlene's rifle in 1 encounter in no return, and this is best done in a mode of hunted. Next, we can get the last 2 trophies associated to this DLC pack by playing as Bill. And the first one we'll be able to get is this Make You All Nostalgic for completing the Part 1 challenge track in no return. And finally, we can get the last trophy for this trophy DLC pack by playing as Bill and killing a bloater with his pump shotgun, and which will get us the trophy biology lesson. With all the trophies completed for the DLC of No Return, we now move on to the main story, and we pick up with Joel recapping the events of The Last of Us Part 1, explaining to Tommy that they did indeed find the Fireflies located in Salt Lake City at their hospital, and that they were going to make a cure, but that it would have meant that Ellie had to die. After these events, we're quickly propelled to the prologue of the story, which takes place 4 years later in Jackson. Joel and Tommy are already out on patrol, and Dina and Ellie are sent out to relieve them. At this point, we're introduced to a new character named Abby, who we know nothing about, but will play a big significance into the story. Now, in the story, we're going to briefly jump back to Ellie and Dina, who are out on patrol, and this is where we're going to get our first story-related trophies. First, we're going to get Apprentice for learning a new player upgrade, and then we're going to get Tinkerer for upgrading a weapon. We are now back playing as Abby, and it seems that she's in trouble. She's run into a horde of infected who's chasing her, and as it seems like she's about to be killed by one of the infected, she's saved by none other than Joel and Tommy. With the horde of infected quickly overwhelming them, they have to work together to get back to their horses, where Abby informs Tommy and Joel that her group of friends are not too far away, and if they are able to ride there, they'll be safe. With a snowstorm on top of them and a horde of infected quickly surrounding them from every direction, Abby, Joel, and Tommy just barely manage to get back to the safety of her friends. We now reach one of the most heartbreaking moments in the story, where Joel is brutally murdered by Abby with a golf club as Ellie is forced to watch. Ellie, rightfully devastated, vows revenge on those responsible for killing Joel. We pick back up with Ellie visiting the gravesite of Joel after she had just watched him get beaten to death in front of her. We then discover that Tommy has already left towards Seattle to hunt down the people responsible for Joel's death, and of course, we are going to follow. We now enter Seattle Day 1, which is the setting where most of the story is going to take place. We start off strong by unlocking the next trophy starter set for finding 5 trading cards. As we progress further into Seattle, we get to the open world portion of the game, which is downtown Seattle. And here, we're going to be unlocking a couple of trophies. First, we're going to get So Great and So Small for finding the engraved ring inside the bank. And then, we're going to get Sightseer for visiting every location in downtown Seattle. While exploring Seattle, Ellie and Dina discover some information about the whereabouts of one of Abby's friends at the TV station, so they decide to head there to investigate. On the way there, though, it's time for our next trophy, and this one is Specialist for learning all of a player's upgrades in one branch. Once we arrive at the TV station, we discover a bunch of dead bodies, one of them being Leah. Without much time to process everything, we're attacked by the WLF and are forced to run away on foot. Having narrowly escaped the WLF, Ellie and Dina take refuge in a nearby theater in Seattle and this is where Ellie finally tells Dina about her immunity, and Dina tells Ellie about her pregnancy. Upon reflecting about the events that happened all in day 1 in Seattle, we now get our first flashback of the game from 3 years prior with Joel and Ellie. Joel surprises Ellie for her birthday and takes her to a museum with dinosaurs, and then this is where we can get our next trophy for looks good on you for putting a hat on Joel. Next, Joel is able to surprise Ellie with a tape recorder that lets her recreate what it might feel like to go out into space. As they prepare to leave the museum, they come across an ominous painting of a Firefly logo with the word liars written underneath. This is most likely a callback to the fact that the Fireflies were trying to make a cure but never did. It is now Seattle day 2, and Ellie has gone out looking for Tommy on her own, leaving Dina back at the theater alone because she's pregnant. To her surprise, she does not find Tommy. Instead, she ends up finding Jesse, who has come all the way from Jackson in order to locate Ellie and Dina. Ellie then takes Jesse back to the theater that they've been using as a home base here in Seattle, and Jesse and Dina are reunited. Dina tells Ellie that she's located one of the people responsible for Joel's death, and they are hiding out at the hospital. Ellie then decides to go after her by herself. Along the way, we end up getting our next trophy for Machinist, which is for fully upgrading a weapon. Upon arriving at the hospital, we end up sneaking in and locating Nora, who is one of the people responsible for Joel's death. Even though Nora does try to escape, Ellie does manage to corner her in a spore-infected room and force her to talk. Now, back at the theater, pretty shook up after having forced Nora to talk, Ellie explains that Abby is hiding out at the aquarium. So, we now have our new destination. It is now Seattle day 3, and we get our next trophy here for in the field for finding our 12th workbench. Ellie ends up stealing a boat, which helps her get all the way to the aquarium, where she then confronts Owen and Mel, who are arguing about the whereabouts of Abby. After a brief struggle, Ellie kills both Owen and Mel, and it is discovered that Mel is pregnant. Ellie, who's in complete shock having killed Mel, who was pregnant, is joined by Tommy and Jesse, who console her and help her as they leave the aquarium together. With everyone back at the theater, Jesse and Ellie hear a noise and rush up to the front to find out what's going on. It is at this point that Jesse is shot and killed, and we discover that Abby has located them at the theater. The story then cuts to black as she confronts Ellie with a gun. Now the story shifts to Abby's perspective as it recontextualizes her motivations and has us replay the last 3 days in Seattle as Abby. First, we are put in a flashback with Abby and her father, and we discover that her father is a surgeon. And yes, the same surgeon that Joel killed trying to save Ellie. This lets us know as a player why Abby did what she did and the reason for her revenge. We're back to Seattle day 1, but playing as Abby this time, and we're going to get our next trophy, Sharpshooter, for winning the marksmanship competition. Soon after, we find a coin, and we get the trophy Mint Condition for finding 5 coins. Next, Abby discovers that her friend Owen has gone missing, so she sets out to find him alone. And along the way, we get our next trophy, Relic of the Sages, for finding the strange artifact. Our next trophy comes in a flashback with Abby, where she has to earn the high score in an archery game to get the trophy, Put My Name Up. Picking back up with the present story, Abby is captured by an opposing faction group they call the Scars, or the Seraphites. And as it seems like it's about to be her end, she is saved by a young child named Liv, who's also trying to save their sister. Together, the group escape from the Seraphites, and despite the fact that Yara is severely injured, Abby decides to continue her search for Owen and leaves Liv and Yara behind. Along the way, we find our next trophy, Journeyman, for finding all training manuals. Abby does end up finding Owen, but is reluctant to stay because of her concern for Yara and Liv. So, it's now Seattle day 2, and Abby has decided to go back and find Yara and Liv. After finding both Yara and Liv, Abby decides to bring them both back to the aquarium, where they discover that Mel has arrived. Mel, being a surgeon, diagnoses that Yara is going to need surgery on her arm, but that they don't have the medical supplies to perform it. So, Abby and Liv decide to head out in search of those supplies. We now get our next couple of trophies. First, we're going to get Safecracker for unlocking the last safe in the game. and then we're going to get survival training for learning 25 player upgrades. Abby arrives at the hospital and is reunited with Nora, who tells her where she can find the medical supplies that she needs. Unfortunately, we have to go down to B3 to get it. And that's where we come across one of the nastiest infected in the game, the Rat King. Now, the Rat King is a very unique boss fight in the game where it happens in multiple different phases. The first phase, you just have to chunk its health down until it goes to phase 2, where an offspring breaks off apart from it. And then, after you kill the Rat King, in the third phase, the offspring runs away, and then you have to find it and kill it for the boss fight to be officially over. With the Rat King dead, Abby's able to escape the hospital and head back to the aquarium with the medical supplies she needed so that Yara can have successful surgery on her arm. We now move into Seattle Day 3, and this is where a bunch of stuff begins to happen. First, Lev runs away and heads back to their island in order to find their mother. This, of course, forces Abby and Yara to go after them, but along the way, Abby runs into her friend Manny, who's under attack from a sniper, and they need to take care of that sniper together. Unfortunately for them, that sniper happens to be Tommy, and he gets the better of them and ends up killing Manny and almost taking out Abby before Yara saves them. After the confrontation, they find a boat and head out to Seraphite Island in order to find Lev. Upon arriving at Seraphite Island, Abby and Yara are able to locate Lev pretty quickly, and then we get our next trophy, Numismatist, for finding all the coins. Next, a bunch of crazy events begin to unfold. First, Yara is shot by a WLF member, and as Isaac appears ready to shoot Abby for protecting Lev, Yara sacrifices herself by shooting and killing Isaac, which allows Abby and Lev to make a run for it. As they begin to try to escape the island, which is currently under attack by the WLF and all on fire, they come across a big Seraphite who they have to fight off. And once they do that, they find a boat and are able to get off the island and head back to the aquarium. Shortly after arriving back at the aquarium, Abby and Lev discover the bodies of Mel and Owen, who have both been killed. They also discover a map that was left behind with the potential location of the person responsible. So they proceed to head out in search of the person. We have now come full circle and are back with Abby holding Ellie at gunpoint. Right before Abby is able to shoot Ellie, Tommy interferes, but this results in him getting shot by Abby and Ellie getting to escape. As Ellie tries to escape into the theater, Abby pursues, and we get an epic 3-stage boss fight that ends with Abby beating Ellie. Just as it seems that Abby's going to kill Ellie, Dina steps in to save her. Unfortunately for Dina, Abby overpowers her and threatens to kill her before finding out that she's pregnant. This prompts her to spare both of their lives, but she warns them that she better not see them again. We now jump forward to the near future to a farmhouse where Dina, who has now had her child, is living with Ellie peacefully. That is until one day they get an unexpected guest, who happens to be Tommy, who managed to survive that gunshot from Abby. Tommy tells Ellie that he has some information on the potential whereabouts of Abby down by Santa Barbara. This information annoys Dina as she seems to want to be done with the whole situation, but for Ellie, this information keeps her up all night to the point where she has to go after Abby. With Ellie now in Santa Barbara, we get to unlock our next trophy called Tools of the Trade for crafting every item in the game. While continuing to search for Abby, Ellie falls into a trap and gets strung up by a tree. It's at this point that two men approach her, thinking that they have the advantage, but Ellie surprises them and takes it back. She questions one of them about the whereabouts of Abby, and when she gets the information, she kills him. Ellie pushes forward with the new information she's received, and we also get the trophy High Caliber for finding all weapons. Upon finding the compound by the group called the Rattlers who are holding Abby, we get a few trophies for the last collectibles. First, we're going to get prepared for the worst for finding all workbenches. Then, we're going to get Master Set for finding all trading cards. And finally, we're going to get Archivist for finding all artifacts and journal entries. After pushing through the compound and rescuing the slaves, Ellie finds out that Abby's being kept on the beach. Once arriving on the beach, Ellie finds a poorly malnourished Abby, who's barely hanging on to life by a thread. Ellie decides to cut down Abby, but it is not to save her, it is simply to force Abby to fight her. Ellie still wants her revenge, and she's going to get it at whatever cost. What proceeds is a brutal fistfight between both Ellie and Abby, one that Ellie gets the upper hand in, and as it seems that Ellie is about to kill Abby, she gets a glimpse of Joel sitting on the porch with his guitar, and it is at this moment Ellie decides to spare Abby's life, officially ending the cycle of violence. Abby then gets in the boat and sails away with Liv, and Ellie's left on the beach, realizing the cost of her revenge. Ellie returns to the farmhouse with her injuries and all, and she discovers that Dina and the baby are now gone. She finds Joel's guitar but struggles to play it due to her missing fingers. This is where we get one last flashback with her and Joel.
I was supposed to die in that hospital. My life would have fucking mattered. But you took that from me.
If somehow the Lord gave me a second chance at that moment, I would do it all over again.
Yeah. I don't think I can ever forgive you for that. But I would like to try.
I'd like that.
Okay. I'll see you around.
Yep.
With Ellie reflecting on the past, she leaves the guitar behind and walks off alone, thus ending the story of The Last of Us Part 2. Once the credits finish to roll, we get the next trophy, What I Had to Do for Completing the Story. We also get You Can't Stop This for completing the story with any permadeath setting. Now we're going to tackle a brand new DLC trophy that was recently added in the game for beating the story in chronological mode. This mode basically lets us play through the story all over again as it happens chronologically. So once we rush through it, we get the trophy I would do it all over again for completing it. Now we tackle the last DLC trophy in this game, and that's to complete the story on granted difficulty. Now granted difficulty isn't as difficult as in The Last of Us Part 1. In this game there are accessibility settings that allow for you to have a much easier time doing this. You can still run past most encounters, but with the accessibility setting invisible while prone, you're able to sneak past all of them without any trouble. The only difficulty is in the boss battles that you have to fight, like the Rat King or the Arcade Bloater, but if you conserve all your ammo for those fights, you won't have a difficult time. Now, once you complete the story on Grounded, you get the trophy, Dig 2 Graves. All that's left is to get the last 2 trophies before the Platinum. So we load up an old save file and we get Survival Expert for learning all player upgrades and Arms Master for fully upgrading all weapons. And once we do that, we get the Platinum. I just want to say thanks everybody for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.